Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about CT scanners. This is perhaps the most important subject in entire radiology, or at least the one that's most often studied. And it's for two reasons. First of all, we're going to be studying a technology that was a Nobel Prize winner, just like regular x-rays, by Röntgen. This one is invented by Dr. Godfrey Hansfield, and it was invented in 1970. The importance with this modality is that not only it allows a lot of diagnostic information, it is also relatively ubiquitous. So it's everywhere, every hospital. We use it for every major diagnosis. In the emergency rooms is probably the most important technology. And although it complements the MRI, and the MRI we're going to talk about it later, I think this one is definitely more of the workhorse for regular hospitals. So let's get started with CTs. This is going to be just an introduction, and then we'll probably add some more videos in different sections of this, but I want to give you a very good primer of what we were talking about. So it was invented by Dr. Hansfield in 1970s. We have gone from first, second, third, and fourth and fifth, even fifth generation of CT scanners. What you need to know is that the first and second had a motion that it was rotational and translational, and I've added some videos to my playlist that show really well those animations, how the first and second generation scanners work. The third one, you can see you have an asterisk there. That's the one we most commonly use, and I'll come back to that one. The fourth and fifth generation, for many different reasons, we don't use them nowadays. It's mainly due to the technology, or some of them might be too expensive to be actually practical. And in fact, the third generation from this one, we developed what's called as the multi-detector CT. So with that multi-detector CT, that pretty much became the eminent technology that we use nowadays. Some concepts I wanted to clarify, fast forward to where we're now. When I wrote here isotropic, and this is our pixel, is represented by the first half of this image. And in CT, we really talk about voxels because we're adding volume to this aspect. So by voxels, we add that thickness, and it's a three-dimensional pixel, if we can call it that way. And the fact that they're isotropic, it let us create reconstructions in sagittal and coronal projections. And by being isotropic, the pixels are not stretched, so we get a better quality reconstruction. In terms of the thickness, nowadays we use approximately a 0.5 millimeter thickness for the x-ray beam. The third generation scanners, they have a fan-shaped x-ray beam, so we use a 0.5 millimeter thickness. However, we often do reconstructions that are thicker than that, and the reason we do that is because we can actually have a better contrast. And just think of it in terms of noise. So we have the thicker our voxel, I think of it as a basket. We're able to take more photons, and therefore we have more data. However, although we reconstruct for display at 1 or 2 millimeters, if we really want to go thin, we can do a special reconstruction or display it as 0.5 millimeters per image slice. And we often do that for aortic angiographs, and for very specific measurements, we go back and we use a very thin cut. In this picture here, what I'm showing you is kind of looking from below, and we're seeing an axial section. This is our generator. We have two fan beams. Here I just draw some structures there, and so our x-rays are going to go from here, and they're going to hit the detectors here, and this whole structure rotates. With that rotation, we'll be acquiring different projections around the patient, and there are different parameters regarding that rotation, whether we're doing a helical or we're doing axial acquisition. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of the pitch. And I wanted to talk a little bit about dose. In patient dose, you have to know that the main beam will contribute about 50% of the patient dose in an acquisition. However, we have two tails on the side that are away from the main beam, and those tails are going to contribute the other half of the radiation exposure, and that's something we need to know for radiation protection purposes and for radiation calculations. And the concept I wanted to talk about is known as the CTDI. Let me see if I have some space here. So CTDI is a measurement that we have created based on phantoms to measure the air kerma delivered to a patient. CTDI by itself doesn't take into account the pitch or the movement of the table. So if we want to take the pitch or the movement of the table into account, we have what's called the CTDI ball. The CTDI ball will give us a number, and we're going to multiply that number by the length of the scan, because the length is going to be directly proportional to our patient's dose. So we multiply that times the length, and we're going to get what's known as the DLP. And a lot of you have probably heard about that. DLP is dose length product, and based on that we make all our calculations for radiation dose delivered in a CT.